Thanks for coming to this breakout session, which is, as you know, on digital society, connected consumer. In setting out this session, I was thinking about three strands, if you like. One was the connectivity and the infrastructure, the broadband connectivity and the infrastructure. The UK, has sort of two sides of the coin in a sense here, which is, the UK consumers and society are, on the one hand, very early adopters. They like technology, adopt these things, but we also have the other side of the coin, which is quite a substantial part of the population, which doesn't have the sort of access and the ability to make best advantage of the opportunities. So there's two sides of the coin. So one strand is around the connectivity and the take-up. The second theme is around the digital technologies and the services that sit on top of it. And for my part, I'm particularly interested in the UK angle. It's a huge market through this kind of connectivity. So what's the UK opportunities, both commercially, for the UK markets, for the UK to be a player in both the domestic markets as well as the overseas markets. And the third, which I touched on earlier, which is the sort of consumer angle, consumer security, consumer confidence, without which we're not going to take advantage of these opportunities, whether commercial or societal. So that was the sort of thinking that I had starting with to set this up. We have 5 sets of excellent speakers with sort of different angles on this. So I think we'll just get going straight away. So can I ask Rahim from the Business Growth Hub in Manchester to come and give you a presentation? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Raj. So my name is Rahim Lakha. I work as a digital growth advisor for the Business Growth Hub, which is based in Manchester. I just want to briefly talk about 2 types of support services that are available to businesses which are located within the Greater Manchester boundary. The first type of support is to try to get a business to a better level of internet connectivity. And the second type of service is essentially what do you now do with that connectivity in terms of promoting the range of digital services that are now available. So with regards to the first line of support, there is, this really comes from the top, the government is committed to rolling out high-speed connectivity across the UK. And there is a program of support in place to help achieve that aim. That program of support is sometimes called, I think is referred to as the Super Connected Cities program. In Greater Manchester, so Greater Manchester, just to be clear, comprises of 10 districts, which are Wigan, Bolton, Bury, Tameside, Rochdale, Oldham, Salford, and the City of Manchester. So that's when I talk about Greater Manchester, it's those 10 districts that I'm specifically referring to. Within those 10 districts, the way the program works in terms of encouraging businesses to adopt better connectivity, the program is kind of split into 2 bits. So we have what's called the rural broadband program and the urban program. The urban program relates to businesses that are located either in Salford or in the City of Manchester. For businesses located in the other 8 districts, they fall under the rural program. The way this works is if you are in a business located in Salford or in the City of Manchester, you do have access to some grant money from government, which is managed by the local authorities. And that grant money you can put towards increasing the connectivity, the internet connectivity to your business. That voucher is for £3,000. So you can take the £3,000 voucher, make a bid to either Salford or Manchester City Council. I think about 96% of bids have been accepted so far. And then you can use that money for a step increase in the internet connectivity to your business. Essentially, we're looking at fibre connectivity here. So that's if you're in Salford or Manchester, that's the program of support available. If you're in the rural areas, the job of increasing connectivity has been given to BT to roll that program out. And I believe that the first cabinet to actually essentially go live with fibre will be next month. and that will be in Oldham. And that program will continue for about a couple of years, and we're looking in those 2 years to get most of the cabinets that serve the business population onto fibre. So that essentially means that the businesses that are in that area should be able to benefit from high-speed internet connectivity. So that's the program of support available essentially from government but managed by local authorities to get businesses onto a better level of internet connectivity. And the main driver there is the need and the realization that actually that connectivity is critical for business growth and for the growth of the whole UK economy. However, internet connectivity is an insufficient condition for business growth. Really, it's a question of what do you do now that you have better connectivity. So to address that angle, that question, the Business Growth Hub, which is a fully funded program of support, we're funded by European Union money and by funding from the local authorities in Greater Manchester. We essentially help businesses to try to understand what is now possible with better connectivity. So we promote technologies like cloud computing, social media, e-commerce, big data as well, and we promote these technologies and what a business can do with those technologies, essentially on the back of better internet connectivity. The way our program of support works, and just to be clear again, this program of support from the Business Growth Hub is really only applicable to businesses that reside within the Greater Manchester area. There are other programs that do exist in other parts of the country, in Lancashire and Cheshire, that would be applicable to businesses that reside in those areas. But what we do essentially within the Business Growth Hub, the program of support we provide falls into 3 categories. If you are a business looking to take advantage of digital and the benefits of better connectivity, you can speak to a digital advisor like myself, essentially for one-to-one consultancy, and we can essentially help you and guide you in terms of the best use of technology for your business. As essentially our program is fully funded, that consultancy is free at the point of use for the business. It also essentially means that what the advice we provide is impartial advice. It's also vendor neutral. We don't get commission or cut from any final purchasing decisions that may be made on the back of the advice that we provide. So that's the first type of support we provide. The second type of support we provide is access to workshops and masterclasses that we host across GM. And these workshops and masterclasses are designed to promote the topics I mentioned earlier: cloud, social, e-commerce, those types of digital technologies, and essentially promote the uptake of those technologies. Again, those workshops and masterclasses for those clients that are registered with the hub are free at the point of use. Again, because we're funded by local authorities in GM and by the European Union. The third area of support we provide is essentially co-investment funding. So if you as a business have a digital project in mind that you want to pursue, and if you believe that project upon successful completion will enable you to generate further growth in your business, we would like to support that project. And we can support that project by providing you funding of up to £3,000 on a match funding basis. So to give you an example, if you would like, for example, to develop an e-commerce business, an e-commerce site, or to develop a mobile app, or to migrate to a cloud service, there are inevitably you are going to incur costs in getting to that point. We can support you in making that move, and hopefully by doing that, by providing you financial funding, it will encourage you to make the move faster, or possibly to make the move where otherwise a lack of funding may have stopped you from doing so. So that essentially are the areas of support available. What we do at the Business Growth Hub and the program of support that essentially the government is rolling down through local authorities are very much connected. What we do, we can't really do unless a business has access to reliable connectivity. At the same time, what the government does, they can't encourage the uptake of higher speed broadband if they don't encourage or don't promote what can be done with better connectivity. So the two sort of go hand in hand. And that is essentially what we do. If you would like to know more about this, please do come and speak to me afterwards. But that's it for me.
Thank you.
Okay.
I should say that perhaps if there are questions, there should be about 20 minutes right at the end. If we could please keep note of the questions, and we can have a discussion right at the end. I also rudely did not introduce myself. I'm Raj Sivalingam. I work at techUK, which is the UK Trade Association for the technology industries, the whole range of industries. So if you're interested in participating in some way in our networks, please get in touch afterwards. But that's my advert out of the way. And also just say that we are due to finish at 12. We have I think we should be able to do that comfortably. But if there are more questions at the end, I may just eat into our lunch session by 10 minutes, if that's okay with you. But hopefully we won't come to that. So Howard, can I invite you to come and give your presentation? Thank you.
Okay, so I should have some slides, hopefully. And while they're coming up, I too am an engineer, and I wear a tie, but only ones that are given to me for free. Here we go. I'm going to talk a little bit about mobile phone technology and where we're going. But before we look at where we're going, let's have a little look back at where we came from. So I have my bag of phones that I like to carry around. I've been around in the business for a little while. So this is what phones used to look like not that long ago. This phone here is 22 years old. Unfortunately, as a young engineer, I was never allowed to have one of these. They used to cost £5,000. This is a very original GSM one on the first GSM networks. My boss had one. I had to borrow it later on when I used to work for Motorola. Within a year and a half, we went down to this. So a year and a half. From that to that. And that was quite staggering. And the other thing that was really interesting about this, made in the UK. Should I say that out? Made in the UK. So we used to make phones in the UK 20 years ago. And the technology changed very, very quickly. So we went on this very steep learning curve. We went from £5,000, this one was about £700 when it came to market, started hitting mass market consumption, and then we started really adding to the technology. We've now got 7 billion subscribers on mobile phone networks. 7 billion. It's almost as many as the number of people in the world. And if you have a look at what we've been doing with the technology development, I'm a technology developer. I develop the technologies that get standardized in 3GPP that ends up in your phones. And if we have a look at what we've achieved over a relatively short time period, data is the biggest change. So voice, we've all accepted. SMS, that's great. It was in there right at the beginning, more or less. We got used to that. But data came along a little bit later, and it started slowly. So we started off with really slow data, 9.6 kilobits per second. So one of the very first meetings I went to in Germany back in 1993, I actually did data connectivity on my mobile phone to get my data. So, you know, it's been around for a while. But it's only really when we got to 4G for LTE, the networks that are getting rolled out across the UK today, that data got as fast on your mobile phone as it is at home. And there are plenty of areas in the UK now where data connectivity on a phone is faster than fixed data connectivity. And of course, our fixed internet is kind of catching up and getting faster and faster and faster, and the mobile internet is getting faster. So where are we going with all this? Well, we're changing the way that we use the technology. The technology use is changing dramatically. So in the old days, people used to make phone calls, then we used to do a bit of surfing the internet. We heard a bit about Google having location-based selling services. We now use location more than anything else on our phones. Our smartphones, location is probably the one thing that's changed the way we use our phones. When I wanted to find the postcode to put into my GPS, I looked on my phone. I typed in the name of this place and it came up and told me the postcode, so I could put it in the GPS in my car. I didn't really have to do that. I could have just used Google to bring me all the way here. So we're changing. Mobile cloud. Most photographs that people take on their mobile phone now end up getting uploaded to some sort of service, whether it be Instagram or Flickr or onto Google. So we're starting to see a lot more data generated by cloud services in the mobile community. New devices are coming along all the time. We don't know what they're going to be. So wearables are the thing of the moment, whether they be bands or watches or other devices that you wear. They're going to change the way that we actually use the mobile internet. And here's some interesting figures of how much that use is going up. So here we can see, this is data from Korea. So if you have a look at this website, it's in Korean, so anyone who doesn't speak Korean needs to go on some Korean lessons. But you can get this data, again, big data. It's there from Korea on usage of smartphones in the Korean marketplace. So at the moment, there are about 55 million subscribers, of which back in March this year, 38 million had smartphones, and of those smartphones, 30 million were LTE. So that's the 4G services, 30 million. Massive uptake. And look at the speed it's happened. If you have a look at that chart up to the top there, you can see in a couple of years, we've gone from nothing to most of the population having LTE. So what are people doing on those phones? Well, we don't really know exactly what they're doing, but what we do know is how much data they're using, and they're using a lot of data. So this is the average data usage across on this other chart over here. We're hitting somewhere around about between 2 and 2.5 gigabytes of data a month, and that's average over those 30 million subscribers. That's a lot of data. So people are using data all the time. Well, we're trying to work out, oh, that chart's not worked. So we're trying to work out where we're going next. And so the ITU are starting to put together some requirements for 5G. So it's about more data, more connectivity. So data speeds are going to go up. We don't see 1 gigabit per second. So we often, as a community, put up the maximum data rate, and of course you never get to see that. You get to see a lower rate. But if you have a look at these lower figures, at the moment we're kind of hitting sort of about 40, 50 megabits per second is quite normal now on LTE. It depends on where you are on the network, so EE's network can deliver some of that capability now. We're moving up to gigabits per second. So what are we going to do when we've got gigabits per second? Latency, how long does it take from me sending a packet of data from my phone to appearing on a web server somewhere? Well, at the moment, we're looking at reducing latency over the mobile bit of that from 10 milliseconds to 1 millisecond. So why is 1 millisecond important? You know, 1 millisecond is kind of a very small period of time. 1 millisecond comes out to be, if you've got a mouse and you move it across the screen and that mouse moves, well, you have to have that mouse moving within about a millisecond of the mouse moving, otherwise you see delay and it gets annoying. So this immersive internet that is possibly coming along could be driven by low latency. It's also going to be driven by moving data from the whole of the internet, because if I've got a web server in the US and I'm sat in the UK and I've got a bit of fibre optic cable, well, light doesn't travel that fast. So the light travelling down the fibre optic cable to the US is going to be the delaying factor. So we're going to have move the content closer and closer and closer to the users. We're also going to connect more things. So there's another session going on right now about Internet of Things. Well, you're going to have to connect those somehow. How are you going to physically connect them together? 50 billion devices. I'm not sure I actually totally agree with that figure. I think it's probably going to be a lot less by the time we get to 2020. But they're the sort of figures. We're talking billions of extra devices getting connected. And we don't really know what they're going to be. It might be your fridge. It might be your microwave oven. It might be your health band. It might be some medical device that you've got implanted in your body. All we do know is there's going to be a lot of them. We're going to have to connect them all. We're going to have to do it in an efficient manner because we've got finite resources. We can't carry on having big batteries and everything. People want longer battery life. We've got more economy, more green mobile. So we're looking at a whole range of new technologies. I won't talk about these today, but there's a lot of exciting stuff happening out there right now that Samsung are working on, along with all of our competitors. We're talking about trying to get commercial equipment in 2020. So one of the things I think that people don't realise is how long these technologies take before the technologists invent them, they end up in 3GPP, they get standardised, we do product development, and then we develop product. So I was working on LTE 10 years ago, and some of these technologies for us are very old technologies by the time you get to see them in the marketplace. So we're working on stuff now that will hit the market probably 2020 to 2022. They're the sort of time frames that we talk about. This is a quick picture of a trial system that we got working right now in Korea. In Korea, we have our main R&D center in a place called Suwon, just outside Seoul. We're getting 1.7 kilometers here. This is running on a test license. You have to get test licenses to use these frequencies, and we're only allowed to use them within the facility. So the longest range we have is 1.7 kilometers. We're getting 500, 600 megabits per second on the first trial system outdoors. We move to indoors. The next generation that we're developing right now, we're getting 2 gigabits, 2.4 gigabits per second. It's phenomenal data rates. And finally, what about the UK? So as I mentioned, that trial is being done in Korea at the moment. You will have seen the recent press announcement with the way that the Korean government are working with the EU. It was announced a couple of days ago. That was a result of Nellie Crows, who was actually across at our research labs in Korea. So we're developing very close cooperation agreements at the moment. So Samsung in Europe is reasonably large. 41 offices, 28 countries, 18,000 employees, 4 R&D centres. I work in one of those in Staines, down in the south. Established in 1991, we've got about 220 staff at the moment. We're working very closely with the 5G Innovation Centre at Surrey University. I think this was a massive step forward for government because they started saying what we're going to do is invest in technology and then bring the technologies together with industry and try and look at the best ways of doing that. But we're also working with other universities in the UK. We work very closely with Durham, with Bristol, the whole range of universities. And I think the key message here is we're trying to bring the European research centres for 5G to the UK. And interestingly, we work very closely with our colleagues from Huawei, and they're doing a similar thing, but they're looking at whether they're going to do it in the UK or in Germany. So interesting times right now for the whole of this research community. And finally, we're doing a lot of work with the European Union on Horizon 2020, massive amounts of money, billions of our taxpayers' money getting invested. We're trying to get some of that back into the UK. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Howard.
So I'm Kim Max-Simon, Marketing Manager at Moobaloo. Just to give you sort of a brief summary of what Moobaloo does, we are end-to-end enterprise mobility specialists. So we work with our clients to understand how to best mobilize their business. So if that is developing an app to interact or engage with clients or consumers, or alternatively and increasingly helping businesses understand how they can transform their business through mobile. So this would involve moving employees away from dependency on desktop software to using mobile apps and mobile to do their jobs better, more efficiently, and to increase productivity. So we work with our clients to develop a mobile strategy, and then we build and develop apps for mobile devices. So we develop bespoke apps across a variety of platforms, iOS, Android, HTML5, Windows, etc. So working in the mobile space means that we get to work with and see some of the most exciting, innovative technologies that are happening in the digital space. So I'm going to touch on a few examples of the technologies and their applications and why they're just so exciting. So the first of these technologies is beacon technology, so location and micro-location based targeting. quite close to home for Mubalu because we have recently opened a division called My Beacons, which specializes at least in beacon technology. So as Howard was referring to earlier, we're all very used to using location-based technology to enhance user experience, to feed location-based information back to the enterprise. So we may have used wayfinding to direct you to a place. You may have been served an advertisement from a restaurant when you're nearby, inviting you to enjoy a meal there for a discounted rate. But beacons really takes location-based targeting to the next level. And it's really about micro-location proximity targeting, so in really close range to a beacon and a particular user. So beacons allow us through a dedicated application on a smartphone or a laptop to deliver relevant information about the context that user and that beacon is in. So we're most commonly seeing it being used really in the retail sector. So you can imagine when you walk past toothpaste in your supermarket, they may pop up a coupon offer on toothpaste. You take a few steps down the aisle and you come to the shampoo section and there may be an offer on shampoo. What that means in terms of being able to collect information and data from your consumers is obviously really exciting, where we have only really been able to monitor very closely how people visited our websites or use our mobile apps. We're now being able to collect that information in the real world. So that's pretty exciting. So obviously it would be used in retail, but the most innovative places that it's being used is in enterprise elsewhere. So there really is the opportunity to transform entire industries through the use of micro-location proximity targeting. So if we use the example of the rental car industry, at the moment you can book to rent a car anytime, any place through your mobile device, but there is a hindrance in the fact that someone has to hand over a key for you to be able to use that car. Through beacon technology, we can eradicate the need for keys altogether. I can book a car, be told where that car is and be given a PIN code. When I come close to that car, that beacon is going to prompt an alert to come up on my phone where I enter my PIN code, I get into the car and I drive. So we are increasingly seeing our clients and the big businesses that we work with trying to find really strategic ways to change the way they do business through beacon technology and just generally in mobile. So even when it comes to looking at developing apps, we've moved from a more opportunistic approach to a more strategic approach. Particularly in the consumer apps, there is an enormous segment of the population who prefer to interact with brands through an app as opposed to going to a website. And Gartner actually predicts that by 2016, mobile app usage would have surpassed a normal internet domain usage altogether. Businesses are obviously and companies are recognizing this, and they're no longer seeing apps as a sort of a single entity or channel, but rather a crucial part of their marketing and business strategies. So they're actually taking a strategic approach to developing apps. That strategic approach will lend itself to any market, and you really need to obviously develop and consider your mobile strategy depending on the markets. There is a massive opportunity in emerging markets, particularly for companies to reach segments of populations that previously they weren't able to. Obviously, I think everyone probably knows a lot about the fact that it's reaching people who previously didn't have access to landline telephones or the internet. So people and companies are able to use what has worked in developed markets and use them in emerging markets. But really, again, it's about taking that strategic approach and understanding what the different drivers are in each of those markets and how best to apply your mobile strategy. So if you're looking at the UK market, your app probably has to work really efficiently because there will be lots of competitors, so you need to make sure that your app does something really well, really quickly. Whereas possibly in an emerging market where there's less competition, you can add more value-add functions to your app to get people to use it more often. So businesses, companies, the enterprise are using the fact that as individuals, we are constantly connected to a mobile device. At the moment, it doesn't require that it needs to be a handheld device in the form of a smartphone or a tablet. Again, as Howard was mentioning, wearables is a place, particularly in the consumer sector, that everyone's getting quite excited about. So your iWatches, smartwatches, Google Glass. But actually, we anticipate that the biggest impact that wearables is going to have is actually in the enterprise. If you think about all the jobs that people do where they need to use their hands, that they would benefit from having information fed through them, for example, through Google Glass. If we look at healthcare, if you are a surgeon busy performing an operation, you can have information about that particular patient, their condition at the time, and anything extra which may be important while you're still operating. The same for engineering, construction, emergency response, military, law enforcement, factory lines, etc. So we really feel that possibly the biggest impact that wearables is going to have will be in the enterprise. So certainly at the moment, that is all of that technology is depending around a particular user, be it a customer or an employee, being constantly connected to the internet and you being able to connect to them. But actually, again, as Howard mentioned, the Internet of Things is really where we're all moving to, and that meaning that absolutely everything is connected. So the Internet of Things is really talking about a broad vision for every object, machine, and person to be connected and to communicate and really to unite physical worlds with the digital world. An M2M or machine-to-machine is an example of the Internet of Things. And that is really turning a thing or a machine into an intelligent device which can exchange real-time data from one to another. We will probably all know about the examples of intelligent homes, so being able to switch your heating on the way back from work, your oven on, your washing machine on, your fridge telling you when you're running out of milk or when your expiry date is on the milk. In some countries, it can even order the milk for you. Again, it's being used in the enterprise in smart factories to basically run an entire factory. Smart cities, council can use it to control certain services like rubbish collection, traffic control, that sort of thing. Healthcare, again, people are looking into, although obviously it's quite complicated, in getting patients to be able to recover and recuperate in home instead of hospital and have their condition and their health constantly monitored via a machine and that exchange of data. So some very exciting, obviously, places that it can be used. And really what businesses need to explore and be educated on is increasingly on the return on investment that you can get from M2M deployment, and obviously being able to manage resources and equipment remotely and exchanging the data between the two. Lastly, I want to touch on telematics. So the logistics, transport, and automotive sectors made up a third of all M2M service revenue in 2013. So the integrated use of telecommunications and informatics in vehicles or vehicles in the move is known as telematics. And we will all be familiar with using GPS, probably integrated hands-free services in your car, certain warnings, automated warning systems in the car. These are all examples of telematics. But again, as we advance and technology advances, there are even more exciting ways that it's being used. So for example, in auto insurance, you can have your premiums decided for you by your car basically monitoring how you drive. And if you drive more safely, your premiums will come down. In the same way that telematics can be used for if you're in an accident to understand who is responsible for that accident, to send a lot of information to your insurance company, which obviously saves on a whole lot of admin of people having to come and check paperwork backwards and forwards, and hopefully that will mean that your claims will be able to be processed more quickly and efficiently. And also even possibly send information to emergency response services to find you if you are involved in an accident. So this obviously can be used in the enterprise to manage fleets. In fact, whole transportation networks can be managed through telematics. So this again is another area where really exciting things are happening. But the common thread through all of these technologies is that everything is connected to everything, and you really need to find a way to help your business identify how you can use any of these technologies to change how you do things, whether it's within your business with employees or even how you interact with your consumer. And then to use, importantly, all that information to do things better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. So next up is Matt, Professor Matt Wilson, who I think I would describe as a serial digital entrepreneur, I think. So he's going to give us his perspectives from the point of view of an entrepreneur, a startup, a small business in this digital space. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Raj. So my name is Matt Wilson. I'm the owner of a number of businesses in Liverpool based in the digital sector. So I'm going to talk today about what is needed in terms of making sure, as a startup business or digital business, here in the UK, we have the right things in place to make sure it's in a good position to be successful, and also opportunities for startups in the digital sector. So a little bit about what I'm doing, the businesses I'm involved in. I have a telecoms business called Telecoms Cloud. Anybody can come get a card later on, and I'll describe how it all works. But I wanted to create a business that is a cloud-based telecoms provider, so people don't need to actually buy hardware or software, use an API in the cloud to have hardware resources and availability of hardware and software resources, but without the capital expenditure. And I created telecomscloud.com, and that is kind of an example which I'll use hopefully throughout this, of where you can create a software service in a cloud, use existing experience, and also use it later on with also connected devices. So that's the first business I have. I have a second business, which is cybersecurity, which is helping small businesses secure their networks and look at cyber attacks and various different things. Also changes in culture as well, in terms of getting them to think how they treat data, how they look at data, and also the kind of getting their staff to have respect for data and information security. So that works with small businesses. And Internet of Things Limited, which is quite obvious. It's a business which, more of a research business. We're working with universities, we're working with startups to explore the next generation of devices and connecting content, connecting devices, and also connecting people to those devices. Anyway, so what do I think in terms of the UK? Is the UK the place for a startup? Is the UK the place for launching a digital business? Well, I think there's three main challenges that we need to get around in the UK to begin with. One is the funding. Now, there's plenty of funding out there. My own experience of the funding opportunities, I still think the bar is a little bit too high, and I just think from a digital entrepreneur perspective, it is quite hard. I'm hearing a lot of the time people say, well, to access the funding, I've got to write up a 20-page, 30-page business plan, then I've got to complete a massive form, then an interview and all these different things. And I suppose my argument to that initially was, well, of course you've got to do that. Some of this is public or European funding. So, of course, you have to justify it's public money. You have to be accountable. But then you look into it and speak to these businesses more. And I was a Prince's Trust mentor for 5 years. So I've worked with a lot of startups and still work now. And I'm still hearing people saying, I've got a great idea. I want to expand. I'm going to create lots of jobs. I want to get a bigger office. I want to do this, this, and this. What's stopping you? Well, we can't get the money. Why can't you get the money? Well, have you gone for like the Northwest Fund, for instance, and taken a look there? Yes, I have. But then there's obstacles and people in wrong postcodes and various different things. If you compare this to, say, other economies, you look at the kind of Silicon Valley style startup and the community there, yes, it's different because it's about private investment more. But even so, it's a lot easier if you have an idea. So I think we need to make that a little bit more fluid. I think make it a bit more available. I think it's very much paperwork driven and bureaucracy and a bit too much red tape still. I think we can make that a lot easier. I think that would be an awful lot better. Second thing is, we touched on it this morning when we opened about connectivity. There's many places in the UK still which don't have the connectivity as needed. I myself have a few businesses, and the fastest speed in some of the businesses I have in the locations is 10 meg download. And we're competing with businesses based abroad. You know, South Korea, for instance, where they're on hundreds of meg or even a gig into the building for the equivalent of £20-30 a month. You know, and where data is key and connectivity is key, we're strangling businesses, we're strangling the growth opportunities there. And although, yeah, BT and the rollout, everything else, there's areas of which the connectivity, it's all very good on the tin by saying, yeah, we've got 100 meg here, we've got this here and that there. But by the time you throw in contention ratios, by the time you look at, you know, who else is in the area, how it's being used, and some of the acts of which service providers are slowing your connection down at peak times, all this type of stuff. The reality is the connectivity in terms of upload and download, because I think many people still don't appreciate what the upload is actually used for. If you're a content provider, a content producer, then if you're going to be uploading photos, videos, whatever content at all, you know, it's kind of flip-flop, because they increase the download and take away, in terms of asymmetrical broadband, take away the upload speed in favour of the download. But what happens if you're a business which actually needs more upload than download? So we kind of need a different approach there. So that's connectivity, and I think that's a kind of bane in my life with that. Hopefully one day we'll get that sorted, and I know we're on the way to doing it. So, and then skills. I've got 7 job openings at the moment. I need PHP developers, I need customer services staff, I need engineers, I need all sorts of different things. I'm involved with the Institute of Engineering and Technology, and even they can't really help me find the engineers and the right people I need. The skill mix, especially in the Northwest, it's really, really hard to find the right people. I could probably create 10 jobs tomorrow if I can just find the right people with the right skills. I think, again, the skill shortage really kind of happening, and what I've noticed, and what I hate to see, and I would hate this to be longer term, is too much of a brain drain. I mean, north to the south is one thing, but we've had, and I've heard of also candidates and jobs leaving the UK for America, leaving the UK for other emerging economies and so on. Not just about pay, it's about opportunity and skill. And they're taking the knowledge that they've gained, the things that they've learned here, away from our local economy. So I think that's potentially a threat to us as well, because as small businesses, as we grow, as we want those staff and we want to tap into that knowledge and that skill, look at being an innovative business, we need those skills and we need access to those people. So I think that's a potential kind of risk going forward. So the kind of hard to find engineers, let's see how that goes. Hopefully it's going to get better, and hopefully we can kind of muscle together and kind of share knowledge and trying to find ways to keep people on board for that. In terms of opportunities, just to finish off with, well, the opportunities, I've created this telecoms cloud, for instance, and we're giving an API to developers, and we're saying to people, here's our API. If you want to build comms apps in the cloud, if you're a hardware developer and you take our API, you can make outbound phone calls, send text messages from a device, you can do a whole load of different things. And the API allows you to do that. And we're using that there to create a kind of, in terms of digital economy locally, we're using within our teams and with our resellers and our aggregates and so on to say, take our API, build your own cloud apps and kind of make your own kind of ecosystem. So opportunities are there. I think there's so many things there for digital businesses, and so many opportunities to look in terms of lateral thinking about what the consumers want. Do we have the connectivity in place? Can we deliver high-speed data in those areas? And how do consumers actually want to consume that content? And you kind of try and think ahead. Could be next, not even 5 years, you know, could be 12 months, 2 years ahead of the consumer, of what they want and how you can actually deliver that. I'm a non-exec in the NHS, and I'm working with them on healthcare applications in terms of telehealthcare, and we're wiring patients up to sensors and looking at them on real-time screens and using that to deliver obviously a better healthcare service, but also to lower costs as well. So nurses aren't going all over the place and checking these patients and driving from point to point all the time. So we can set parameters and say that patient's vital signs should be within these parameters. So we've got a lot of trials on the go with that, and there's so many opportunities in the healthcare sector, and there's so many different things going on. Mentioned about cybersecurity before, one of my businesses. Cybersecurity is one of the biggest emerging threats now, if not already in some places. And is there a threat to our way of life? Is there a threat to digital businesses? Yes, there is. And I don't think still information governance, the governance of that important information, from patient identifiable information within the likes of the NHS through to secrets, intellectual property of your business that you've made, or a threat from abroad with people launching attacks on businesses to gain access to your intellectual property. So there's opportunities and breakouts in that to say, what could we make to counter that? What service could we provide? What service could we manage and protect on behalf of businesses? So I think personally the UK is a leader in innovation, and I think we've got some, not small issues, some key issues there to counter, and we are sorting those things out. I can see that, and I can see the progress, and I just hope we can sort it in enough time so that when some of these other emerging economies, they're not going to kind of take over and take some of our kind of thunder from that. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So I'm David Llewellyn-Jones from Liberal John Moores. I'll be handing over to my colleague Bozu halfway through. I want to talk about consumer confidence and trust and security in services, and it relates to some work that we've been doing. I'm going to start off by talking about trends a little bit. We heard some trends earlier about the growth of mobile phones and things like that. There are lots of different ways that you can look at the way the internet has developed and consider the trends in it. I want to think about a couple of them, and that's to do with the way internet services have become more distributed and also more interacting. So we look at the development of the internet. We start from PC through the internet. We look at Web 1.0, Web 2.0, to cloud services more recently, and big data. And what we see, or at least what I see when I look at that, is a trend towards more distributed systems, more distributed services, interacting to provide richer data and richer services. So I'm pleased I'm not the only one that's had an XKCD cartoon today. This is just a backdrop to trends, I guess. Okay, so when we look at that, we think that's going to continue. We think there's going to be more distribution of services, there's going to be greater interaction, and that's going to move into composable services. So more specific services that have more particular functions, and but which are interacting together in more in richer ways. And that's using technology, which isn't necessarily new technology. These sorts of techniques have been around for a long time, but they are becoming more prevalent in actual use. And you can imagine services built up, for example, of payment services, of search services, content services, all distributed between different companies, different organizations, and interacting in more dynamic ways. So it could be that you have a unified front end that's shown to the user, but in the background, the services are being switched out depending on things like price or capabilities, without the person, the user who's actually using the services realizing it. But that introduces a lot of challenges in terms of consumer confidence. Users take trust and security very seriously, quite reasonably, but what they want to have is confidence that the services that they are using are secure, that they provide the privacy, the security that they expect. And if you have a lot of services that are being switched out in the background, they're not necessarily aware that that's happening. That's a real challenge in terms of consumer confidence. And in general, consumers aren't really given great tools to understand security. They consider it to be important, but understanding whether or not the services that they're using are secure or not is a big challenge. So how to tackle that? They need to be given tools. Well, when you have a lot of dynamic interacting services in the background, what you need is automated tools, things like verification monitoring services, automated tools that provide the security that consumers expect. And somehow you have to get that across to the end user. Now, that's not something that the end user can actually take a role in necessarily, but they need to be clear that those security capabilities are there in the background. So you need automated security techniques tied with some kind of branded security. Research has shown that consumers do actually take a branded security, so things like security badges, very seriously. So you need to somehow tie the two together. Okay, so I should say these numbers aren't real. Apologies, Raj, for putting those up. Because the takeaway really is that security and trust is a big issue, but with these dynamic interacting services, you need to have tools and techniques that do that to keep things secure and provide information to users to make that clear. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Bozu now, who's been working on a project over the last 4 or so years to develop some of these tools and tell you a little bit more about how they might work.
Thanks, David. So my name is Bo, a colleague of David from Liverpool John Moores University. So continue with what David mentioned about the future internet will be full of services. So as a consumer, how can we trust a service? To boost our confidence, we think important thing is this one, is a service level agreement. So we already have this service level agreement today. I think some of you may offer to your customer, or some of you may have been offered by your service provider. This is basically a legal binding between service provider and the service consumer to state some service level objectives that the service provider promised to achieve. So I take an example here. I just noticed this morning that we have a delegate from NTT, and I think he's not here. I think. So it's good. This is from internet. It's about the SLA offered by NTT Communications about their data services. So we look at it. It's quite simple. It's written in natural language, and it covers 4 basic areas about the quality of services. So about the availability, about the latency, and data loss. The reason why it's simple, I think. Well, as a service provider, they try to make a general SLA as possible, so they don't have to customize it for different consumers. Also, they try to mention as little as possible, so when things go wrong, they take less responsibilities. As a consumer, do I trust these services when they have been offered to me? For personally, I think the answer is no. As David mentioned, the important thing is to have some kind of security and the trust in the service. So I have the certain confidence that the service I'm using is secure enough. Some examples about what I mean security. I'll explain those things by examples. So first one is about data security. So eBay, I received email, I think early this month. I guess most of you received the same email. About asking you to change your password. So why? Because eBay has a security breach. So they lost all our information about our name, our address, and even our password, which is supposed to be stored in encrypted format. So that's something eBay didn't say that. Well, I'm quite annoyed because I thought my password should be stored on their server, encrypted. But apparently, probably they didn't. That's something they didn't mention. On the other hand, Yahoo, in April this year, so Yahoo announced that they will encrypt all the data between their data centers and also our emails with them in response to the former USA agent Edwin Snowden's claim that they didn't encrypt any user emails. So this kind of thing, this kind of promise from Yahoo is kind of insert a clause in their SLA. So in the future, if I'm using Yahoo, I can have some certain confidence that they will encrypt my data to some extent. About privacy, data location is something I want to mention. So is it important? Probably yes. So on the 17th of June, exactly 1 week ago, the GCHQ mentioned that they can intercept any data, any UK users' data with Google and Facebook because those companies are registered overseas. So you may think that we probably don't have a choice between whether we use Google or Facebook because we have to. But consider that if you have choice with other services, if you have choice between different services which you can choose from, one says, okay, I can promise your privacy because I'm registered in the UK. Other one says, I'm registered overseas, so I can't protect your privacy. So whether you're going to choose this one or the other one. The last point is about security of the service provider itself. So it's the Heartbleed. I think probably some of you heard of it. So it's a huge security vulnerability have been found early this year. So probably tens of thousands of servers has been compromised, exposed to this kind of security flaw. So as a service provider, I want to get some guarantee that they will fix it quickly. So the reality is like a service provider cannot, they cannot attack free. I mean, all the service providers face some kind of security attacks, but they can make some promise about how quick they're gonna fix their server and how frequently, for example, how frequently they're gonna update their server to fix their firewalls, setups, etc. So to achieve this, what I mean to achieve this, I mean to insert those security clause in the SLAs. We have been working on this project, European FP7 project called ANIKET. It's quite a big project, and I'm quite fortunate to work with some excellent partners across Europe. So we created a set of tools, 3 tools that help consumer to achieve the security. So first we have the social technical security modeling tools to help you to demo, to help consumer to demo their security needs when they use services that interact with each other. And in the middle, we have something called the service composition framework that will help the consumer to create this like service level agreement. It's machine readable, so it can happen automatically. It's just can benefit, I think, the theme has been mentioned, like M2M or Internet of Things. And the last, we got the service runtime environment that monitors the service running on the server. So if we identify any threat or anything happens, so we can change the service, replace the service with the new ones. In this way, to make sure that we have a secure paradigm of the environment. So that's all from me. If you are interested, please just ask questions with David and me, or get in touch. Thank you.
Obviously, the last 2 speakers' theme was around security and consumer confidence, but there's that's a theme that goes across all of the speakers as well. So can I maybe kick us off by asking each of the speakers about the from your kind of particular activity, what are the current issues around consumer confidence and security from your particular angle, and perhaps David and Bo at the end, if you have any insights or reflections when you heard the other speakers in terms of the confidence area. So if you could perhaps, if I could ask you to talk about that. So give you the mic.
Thank you. So in every phone for the last 20 years, we've had one of these, which is a SIM card known to most people. So in the industry, it's called a UICC. It secures everything that you do on your phone. I think it's really interesting to look at the way the internet's developed and the difference in the models used in the internet, who have basically gone to a less secure password username type security. And I've always found it fascinating that people have put up with that for so long and that we haven't moved to a more physical-based security. So I think one of the challenges that we're looking at the moment is how do we build on the ultra-secure model? People have been trying to break these for donkey's years, and they haven't really managed it. And so if you have a look at why we have security in the phones, it's because Vodafone very nearly went bust in the very early days of GSM, just before GSM came along, because people were creating phones that hacked into their network and making free phone calls. So we've had a super secure system in mobile. I think it's time that we try to transition across to the whole of our internet as well to have really secure internet.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I speak to a lot of our clients who do raise questions around cybersecurity, particularly within the field of cloud computing. So as clients move towards cloud servers, there are a lot of questions being asked around not only how secure are those servers, but how private is my data. And I think, as Bo mentioned recently, the revelation that came across recently that GCHQ can actually tap into your data if it's based overseas without a warrant, whereas if your data was UK-based, the government would need a warrant. That kind of stuff suddenly doesn't help a cloud advocate like myself to push cloud services to our clients. The issue, I think, with something like that, it's a big problem for potentially a big problem for a client, because if you now essentially are saying that an overseas cloud provider is potentially a bit more insecure relative to a UK-based provider, you also limit the choice available to the company in terms of the services they can tap into. In fact, it's quite a dramatic reduction in the choice. A lot of the cloud services are coming from overseas. I think, so it is a concern that's being raised over and over again. I would say just two more things. The first is that I think there's a role here for government to look into this more seriously. I know we do have things like the Safe Harbor Agreement that looks at providing the same kind of data protection to that a UK company can say that they, even though the data is based overseas, it conforms to EU data protection policies. But when you also at the same time read reports like GCHQ saying, well, that doesn't really matter for us, we can still tap into your data, there's an issue here. I think there's a political issue that needs to be solved. And I think governments need to come together and come to some agreement on how data is going to be used. The second thing is that when I also do speak to clients and I say, yeah, okay, so there are issues with cybersecurity and privacy of data. What I do also sometimes say is that you've got to take this as on balance, which is the better approach. If you kept your data on your own premises with your own servers, does that necessarily make it more secure than keeping it on a large cloud server? Bearing in mind that for an average SME, security protocols are usually fairly poor anyway. So I think that sometimes it's also a question of balance. It's not neither is a perfect world, moving increasingly to cloud services, nor is keeping everything either UK-based or on-premise based. That's not always the right solution. So sometimes it's looking at the right, on balance, which is the right course of action.
When it comes to security, I'm speaking specifically from app security, and it's slightly different on the consumer side to what it would be for developing apps, obviously for the enterprise. So on the consumer side, consumers are often quite suspicious when downloading an app, and the app kind of starts listing all the various services that it needs to tap into and use off your mobile phone. So it's really important for us and a lot of sort of reputable app developers to make sure that you are only using relevant information from that user's phone, not ever storing any of that information, and making sure that when you're developing your app that you're encrypting all of that information as it moves between that user's phone and your back-end system, so that no one can ever intercept that network and get any of that information. When it comes to looking at apps that are developed for the enterprise, there is a lot of work done because companies obviously want to protect the information that employees are using their phones to distribute and send to each other. So there's a lot around MDM or mobile device management that is being done to be able to control what apps are used on employees' phones and how information moves between those apps and between different devices. And obviously the ability to completely wipe the phone if it's stolen. One of the things with developing an application, which is also important from a security point of view for businesses, is whether information that is being used between apps is stored on an actual device, because you don't want someone's tablet, perhaps if you're working in the healthcare industry, for example, if there's a whole lot of information about a patient, as an employee uses an app to access information on a patient, you don't want that then to be stored on that device, which then goes missing and anyone could have access to it. So yeah, it's all about obviously securing the apps and deciding where best to store the information depending on the use.
Thank you. I think mine's along a similar lines, more to do with businesses in terms of treatment of data and the Data Protection Act. I just think a lot of companies don't have respect for data, and as a consumer, the way that they treat and store and probably don't encrypt the data. Here in the UK, for instance, I just think, in terms of where we're going with that, I just think it's really shabby the way that their attitude is towards data. That's me as a consumer. From a business level, I'd say the big concern for me is some of my businesses are competing against businesses based abroad who, like for like, well, it looks like for like to a consumer, and the way that they store data looks exactly the same product. So we have one product, for instance, whereby it's 256 bits encrypted. It's stored in terms of customers' data within the European Union, and it's stored in 5 separate data centers, and it's striped around all those data centers, so you can't bring the data together unless you bring all 5 together. It's quite a secure system that we've developed. We're competing exactly the same product against a South African company who keep the same data totally unencrypted on insecure systems which aren't even patched, from out-of-date 2008 operating systems. And like for like, consumers are just choosing it because I don't think they have the concern or they have the knowledge of how easy it is to break into systems. So personally, I think we're going to see 2 things. One, politically, we're going to see an awful lot more breaches in the public sector, probably more so, and also private sector, more and more of these breaches and whole-scale data going missing, and consumers really suffering before anything's really done. Personally, the Information Commissioner, which is probably not far based from here, they don't have the tools they need or even have the teeth to even crack down on most of the biggest offenders. We've seen this recently with the cold calling, the nuisance phone calls, nuisance text messaging that people keep getting. They can't do anything because all they do is say, well, we'll find the companies, and the companies are most abroad anyway, and the ones which are here, they just go into liquidation, and the following day come back up as a new company and circumvent the fine. I asked for a Freedom of Information request to the Data Commissioner, and I got the information from them in terms of how many people pay the fines compared to how many fines they issue. It's actually very, very small in terms of the amount of paid fines. That just shows you that these companies are purposely circumventing the data protection legislation. And then they're the ones that went in the UK. What about internationally? Now, that is in terms of intrusion. In terms of data storage, the second thing is the way it's stored. There's no proper standards for consumers to say a kind of a kite mark, a badge to say this company operates on this standard. Yes, we've got ISO 27001, we've got quality management systems 9001 and so on, but there needs to be an easy to access, an internationally recognized way of storage and encryption that consumers can easily buy into and see. Because people are just putting on, 128-bit encryption with 3-DES and so on, triple-DES encryption, which is easy to break, and they're putting the badge mark on the site to say, oh, that must be encrypted. I'm happy to do my shopping on this site. When actually you don't actually understand what's going on and the threats to them. So I think going forward, I think those are the issues that we need to address. I think respect for data and businesses sitting up and paying attention, which involves, the authorities cracking down and saying, you must do things properly from now on. Otherwise, we're going to lose total confidence in the digital economy. Thank you.
Thanks. So, following on from those comments, it's I guess all very sensible words to my ears. But it strikes me that one of the things that needs to perhaps be acknowledged is that there is a cost associated with security, and you said that in terms of people choosing other services which are less secure. By making a service secure, you do make it more costly. There's also a cost in terms of usability. So, Howard, I was interested by your comment about phones. They do have a really good track record, but of course, a lot of the movement nowadays in terms of apps is to go outside of those security mechanisms and to just access data through the internet. I guess because there is a usability payoff to that for the consumer.
And it's really hard to get a value proposition that actually embeds security into a process that consumers are willing to go for, to pay more for potentially. So my view would be that it has to be a base standard. It has to be something that is embedded in all of the services that are provided.
So I just think from a research point of view, there is one issue always there, because we got security and we got different aspects, like I mentioned, the encryption, privacy, and your different security mechanisms. But how to compare them? Because each of them has different effect in your system. So as a consumer, if I face two services with different strengths in security, then I need to make a sensible trade-off between the services. And that's something we are researching into it. So try to help consumer to make sensible choices.
Thank you, Bo. Are there just 2 minutes? Any questions? Any final questions? Yes.
Mike Moores from IRS in Liverpool. We're an SME providing scientific support services to the healthcare industry. It's been a great session describing the infrastructure for the connected society. The big problem is, how do you engage with SMEs who actually do interact with consumers? Because until we roll out this capability into the business sector, and that means the SME sector, not the big multinationals, this won't happen. And given that we don't have broadband infrastructure in the UK, which it would be required to actually engage with the SME sector, we're going to run into problems. We're trying to do what this session is all about today, but we're really having to learn as we go along. I've learned things today that are going on that I never heard about. And yet we've been trying to become an IT-driven company for the past 10 or 15 years in our sector. So I think that, A, we're not hearing about the consumer side, and the connected consumer is the key, and how to engage the SMEs that will connect with the consumer, not through the big companies who have their own capability. There's a lot of SMEs that need to move into this sector to move their businesses forward. And I think that's a big problem in the UK.
Yeah, good question. Perhaps I might just target that to Rahim and Matt, if that's all right.
Yeah, so how do we engage with the SMEs to promote the digital agenda, and how so that they're better connected with their customers? I think that's clearly an important question, and it's not an easy game, in all fairness. There are a number of obstacles in place. I think one of the issues is trying to really educate SMEs on what is possible with digital technology, and try to get them also to appreciate how their own customers and clients are increasingly connected online, and how they can sort of then work that relationship. So it's difficult to do that. The way we sort of do it at the Business Growth Hub is, I think part of the basis for running our workshops and our masterclasses is to try to get an SME to take time out to explore certain digital technologies, and to look at the impact of those technologies within their own business model. And that's kind of guided by a digital expert who can help them sort of just slowly explore what is possible. It often, occasionally you come across a business that will just turn around and say, I don't really need better connectivity, and I'm not interested in the voucher that's available to upgrade my connection. I'm not interested in cloud. I'm not interested in social media. And it can be hard. So to engage with those companies that really just don't see any value in the digital world. But that essentially we can only try. And the program of support we have available is to be proactive, to reach out to the SMEs, and to just educate them on what is possible. And for those that are already educated and want to take the next step, then we can also go further with them in terms of grant funding or otherwise, to help them explore and develop digital projects within their own business.
Thank Thank you. Matt, do you want to say anything?
I think I'd support that. I'd also say there needs to be more interworking between the consumers and the businesses, maybe focus groups. Consumers with businesses coming together to help develop the products, manage expectations. I think there's quite often a disconnect between what consumers want, their expectations, and also what the businesses provide as a service. And there's a void that opens up, and that void is either disputes and distrust, lack of confidence. I think I've seen it happen time and time again with people. So I think consumers need to probably come together with businesses, and there's businesses that need to take that lead. I think from a business perspective, it's a culture change. Many businesses are either proactive on the internet and digital or reactive. The ones which are reactive will just get dragged along until they're kicking and screaming they have to do something. And the ones which are proactive are the pioneers. They're the ones who will lead that change. So I think it's just more inclusivity, kind of interworking, collaboration between consumers. I think that's definitely the way to go, and it's how we bring that together with trade associations, trade bodies, membership organisations, and consumer organisations as well.
If I just quickly change hat, so instead of my Samsung role, I also sit on the board of the European Telecommunications Standards Institute, ETSI. ETSI has struggled for years and years and years trying to get SMEs to write European standards. So we take healthcare, for instance. So we've got an e-health committee who are there to write the standards so we can have across the whole of Europe, we could have a similar ICT system across all health systems. We can't engage. At the moment, SMEs aren't engaging in that process. So somehow we need to educate and to bring them in, because it isn't an expensive long-term process that people imagine it's going to be, and the returns can be fantastic for SMEs. Cybersecurity, TC Cyber's just got set up, so we're looking at European standards for cybersecurity. So again, if there's any SMEs in here that want to take part, come and talk to me and have a look at the resources that are available, because for very small amounts of effort, you can get massive returns across Europe.
Any quick comments? No? I think, unless there are any burning questions, I'd perhaps like to call... Oh, yes, sure.
I just want to punctuate what you said, Matt. I'm a consultant working with a disruptive big data recruitment company, and I've also worked in the education sector, and the biggest issue everybody's going to have is the shortage of skills. It doesn't matter what technology and ideas you come up with, if you haven't got those people in place to actually bring that and turn it into something real, we are really struggling. And the UK, the schools are just not even looking at it. I work with one of the top academic schools in the country. They're not looking at computer science. They don't even know it exists. They're looking at, they need maths and physics, which is great, but they want to be lawyers still. They want to be accountants still. Why? This is such an exciting arena to be in. So whatever you do, you need to convince people to educate the kids, really, and the girls too. The ladies, I'm afraid, there's no queue here, no queue today. So that shows how many women we need to get into this industry as well, because it's a great place to be.
Quick one, please. Yeah.
Just very quickly, I think it's our role as businesses to inspire the next generation. I go into schools and universities a lot and kind of try to convince people to sign up to engineering and different things. I think it's our job as businesses, and it's not just engineers, it's all different things. And there's no offence to any lawyers or accountants in the room. It's more so, in terms of engineering, we do need more engineers, and we need to increase those skills. And there is a skill shortage out there. And we, as the people who are in this room, anything to do with the digital sector, if you can give up your time to get involved in some of the charities, like the IET, for instance, Institute of Engineering and Technology, or the British Computer Society, or anything, there's loads of academic programs you can get involved in. Just turn up one day a month or one day a quarter, and all you have to do is say, this is how we do things in this industry. Inspire those young people. Because especially at kind of 14, 15, when they're making key decisions about their life, to turn around to say, wow, I was so inspired. Because that's what happened to me. Somebody inspired me, and this is where I am today.
Fantastic. Thanks. Thanks, Matt. And I think, if I may, I'll bring the discussion to a close for now. Obviously, we're going to go to lunch in the atrium. I think you know where that is. And we can carry on. I think it's been a fantastic session, so I'd like you to join me in giving a hand to our panelists. Thank you very much. I mean, this is a crucial area. I feel very, it's a passion for me about the sort of the opportunities. The UK isn't doing badly, it's doing well, but we are alongside a lot of countries that are doing very well too, and we need to do better. So, please do get in touch if you want to talk to me about any insights or things we need to do. I'd be up for taking things forward. Thanks to UKTI for facilitating this. Thank you all. Bye-bye.